Okay, welcome to Generation Movie on Monday, November 9th. Thank you for joining us. I'm just playing with some toys. Um, my name is JW Colwell. Joining me, as always, is the amazing Rich Drees. And
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
I'm bummed, dude. Bummed.
Yeah, this
It's a
it's been a rough
fucking
couple of
bummer. It's been a bummer of a day. Like Ed Krampel from the Mets died. You said that, comic book writers that you're artists that you like died, and
Yeah.
James Earl Jones passed away, and
Mhm.
it's just hit me now. I stole your pictures, so we're gonna go through them, but you know, uh, without a voice here, this sequence doesn't work.
No.
Without a voice, this sequence doesn't work.
True.
Like. Uh, he was very, very good. Right? You know. I don't know. It's a little crummy.
Just thinking about him. You know, we're Star Wars kids. We grew up with the original trilogy. Um, so that was our first exposure, most likely, unless our family was watching Roots around the
Or
same time.
Conan,
That's true.
like I was Tulsa Doom.
Mm-hmm. But he's an incredible actor, beyond
Range.
the
Yeah, the range.
started on stage.
Started out as a stutterer. Like started out
Yeah,
as somebody who couldn't speak in front of people, which is an astounding kind of like little factoid that you dig up when we lose our great
mm-hmm.
right?
But I mean, when your first movie though is a role in Doctor Strangelove, that's that's
It's a great role
something.
too. Funny.
Um,
Um, yeah,
he kind of maneuvered like the blaxploitation era without ever actually doing a blaxploitation film, which I
well,
guess speaks to what he wanted to do with his career in terms of his roles and stuff like that. And so, yeah, he does do Star Wars, and he did do Conan,
he
but
gets
also
paid
in this,
$7,000 for Star Wars. Rich, $7,000 is all he
I
gets
think
paid
he
for
came out on top
the
overall.
original. Well, but
Yeah.
like the original payment was $7 to do a voice, $7,000 to do a
Mm-hmm.
voiceover for this B sci-fi movie that people were talking about, right? He's the
Yeah.
voice of CNN. He
Hunt for Red October and those early Jack Ryan films, Coming to
James Greer,
America,
yeah,
Sneakers, um, which is a great film. And at
fun.
some
It's a
point,
fun
America
movie.
will realize that and go right back and go, "Oh yeah, that's right. This is awesome."
And
It's just
little known Star Wars fact, like he took $7,000 for the role, but then later in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, um, Empire Strikes Back, he declined the screen credit out of deference to David Prowse, who he
mm-hmm.
felt was not getting really the credit, you know what I mean, like that he deserved. He came
Yes.
back to Star Wars for Revenge of the Sith, Rogue One, and for the Obi Wan Kenobi series. Um, but actually, he wasn't for Obi Wan. They used archival recordings and AI to recreate Vader's voice, which is I don't know. That's not great. Like, but
That's
when you think about James Earl Jones, though, like he was an amazing actor on stage too. Like everybody who ever got a chance to see him in August Wilson's Fences on Broadway, there is not a single person who has seen that performance who didn't talk about how amazing he was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so he's just one of those actors that I don't know that you ever look at a James Earl Jones role either on stage or on television, like until he started dominating television at the end, where he was in he was showing up in shows, made fun of his stutter on Will and Grace, made fun of his voice on Will and Grace. So he literally crossed over, into like pop culture, like legend, just because he was able to do everything and everybody wanted to work with him, and just he's one of the greats. 93, and he is one of the rare holders of the prized EGOT, right?
Yes.
So he's
Yes.
He won a Grammy, I guess, for a spoken word album he did in '77, I think it was. So it's like, he's just a shade above everybody else in the sense that he did everything he ever wanted to do. And you're right, the blaxploitation thing is an amazing thing. To be an actor that didn't star in a blaxploitation movie, being African American in the '70s because you chose not to do it.
Yeah, it was easy money too, for these actors. And you always see so many who are in them, and they do good work. But I could see where other actors would look at it and go, you know what? I don't like those types of roles. I want to do something that maybe is a little bit more positive, is a little bit more culture or whatever.
And actually, one of the first, like the idea that he originated a role on Broadway and then got to do it on screen, The Great White Hope, right? He literally he got to do some of the things that other actors didn't get a chance to do. Great White Hope, right here. You said Come to America, right? I mean, he's just a towering presence in our lives that, the voice of CNN, for fuck's sake. Like, it's an incredible career, right? That his voice lives on in every, like,
I mean, his voice is so amazing. Who wouldn't have wanted that on their answering machine? This is Rich's answering machine. Dun dun dun, or something like that. Even.
I mean, well, and think about like, I don't know, like like a lot of things running through my mind as we're going on tonight, but this one, like this whole sequence in The Empire Strikes Back, is my favorite, one of my favorite sequences. Also, the most often misquoted bit of dialogue in the history of film, because he doesn't say, "Luke, I am your father," right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I know, and other Star Wars fans know, it's not "Luke, I am your father." It's "No, I am your father," right?
Yes.
Like, so it's one of the greatest sequences in film history, right? And the greatest reveals. He was also the dad in both good and bad, right? Like, good dad in Lion King, bad dad in Star Wars, good dad in Coming to America, bad dad in Fences. You know what I mean? Like, he was the quintessential professional, and as I say often, and it's not. Sometimes it's just lip service, but he was a one of one, right?
Yeah.
So and, that's the bummer.
Also remember his role in Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, as the baseball writer. This field, right? This field. They will come from everywhere. They will not know it's part of their souls, right? Yeah, just a great actor. Field of Dreams is one of those movies that, like, you look back and it's got Burt Lancaster and fucking James Earl Jones in it. You know what I mean? Like, Costner's great, but everybody surrounding Costner in that movie is pretty spectacular. But yeah, so that's the bummer news. And then I'm looking at the comments. I'm like, oh, I'm like tearing up. Anyway, let's get some comments. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken. I'm sorry I was a little weepy early. Hey, guys, it's been a shoot a few days to make me laugh. I'm sorry.
Sorry we started off with the death parade.
Sorry. Wait.
We will try to make it.
Who all died? What? Good evening, gentlemen. I had a great Labor Day. I hope you had a great Labor Day weekend. I did. Family was down, so we did some things. The new Crow was better than Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. No, it wasn't. I disagree, Joe Ridgely. We'll talk more about that later. Dude, I'm literally hearing all this now. Holy shit. Yeah. Raven also writes, wasn't planning on seeing Crow or Pirate, but was hoping, but haven't seen Beetlejuice 2. Okay, well, we're not going to talk too much about Beetlejuice 2, although we do have to talk about Beetlejuice 2 a little bit. But you're not giving me faith, Joe. It's not great. It's good. It's not great. It's good. Rest in peace, Darth Vader. Yeah. Hello, Jamie Hill. Good to see you.
Evening, Jamie.
His Big Bang Theory episode was good with Carrie Fisher. Yeah. Although I despise the Big Bang Theory. But he was good in anything he does. He was Anne Rice's chosen voice for narration of Feast of All Saints. And did get a good amount of money from it when Katrina happened. He was a good person. That's the other thing you get from everything today. He was a good person. None of us have mentioned Sandlot. He was great in the Sandlot as the aging former baseball player. Fences was so good. Hello, brothers. Hello, Sean Smithson.
Evening, John.
Rich, not to downplay James Earl Jones, but what comic book artist died?
John Cassidy. The news kind of just broke about an hour or two ago. I really enjoyed his work on Planetary, which he did with Warren Ellis. He did the artwork on Astonishing X-Men during Joss Whedon's run. He did a run on Star Wars that was really good. Captain America. I'm trying to think what else. Those are the ones that kind of popped right up, to my mind when I read that. It's unfortunate he was 52. So anytime somebody younger than me dies now, I get really,
somebody's missing out.
Yeah. I don't know anything else beyond that. Like I said, his family only announced it like an hour or two ago on social media.
I agree, Cheetah. Joe is throwing shade on Beetlejuice. But he's throwing shade on Beetlejuice because I think he likes The Crow more than anybody I've ever met. Because The Crow is bad. Know him from Joss X-Men. Wow, that sucks. Talented artist. Yeah. And then, let's see. Ooh, what else we got? Sorry, something else happened. Something just beeped. I don't know what beeped. But yeah, I mean, you could throw shade on Beetlejuice. But the thing that we do have to discuss with Beetlejuice, this guy here, juice loose. Rich, you can throw shade on Beetlejuice all you want, but $111 million in 3 days is
not too shabby.
Not too shabby. Considering
I said I was in the minority about only being lukewarm on it. So, I'm actually very happy. I'm happy when any movie does really well. This is doing fantastic. Next weekend it's probably going to drop off a bit, but because I don't see this as a movie that people will go back to over and over again.
I don't know. I think it's got a clear runway for 3 weeks. I think it's got a clear runway. The Joker tickets went on sale this morning at 10. The Joker Folie à Deux, when we're starting to hear some. If you're reading reviews, they're not great. It's like more of the same. That movie made me sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we don't have anything this coming weekend. I don't think next weekend. I know it's like The Substance with Demi Moore, which looks amazing. We have the Fathom of the Christopher Reeves documentary coming up.
Yeah, the Superman documentary is going to do remarkably well. I don't know if the Killer's Game is something I want to see because I like Hitman stuff. Hitman fighting other hitmen is always funny to me. Dave Bautista is actually kind of blossoming from his WWE career into kind of like a legit action star.
Yeah, and we've got Kevin Smith's 4:30 movie opening up. I'm not sure on how many screens. It's one of these Saban releases, so it might not be that big a release.
It's not.
And
It's not playing in
it'll
my
vet for
theater.
ticket money with home video. So
Oh,
that's
Speak No Evil's opening as well. So I don't
oh
know.
oh god.
Blumhouse is on. Have you already seen it? Why that was a bad reaction.
No, I've seen the trailer about 400,000 times,
I think
and
the second and
I'm
third
not
generation of the trailer were not great in the sense I feel they gave away the entire movie. But you got you got a little bit of competition, but I think again, I think Beetlejuice is in a prime spot, just the same way it was when it released and was the all-time September box office holder. Warner Brothers, by the way, really smart in some of these September box office openings, and then clearing the way for their movie to open in October. They've kind of done a really good job the last couple years in how they set up like having a movie open on Labor Day, which again was a no brainer. Probably
Mhm.
5 years ago, right? If a movie season ends, we usually get into middle September, then we get into October, the horror season, right? But
Mhm.
I will say Warner Brothers has really taken, kind of this thing. We're going to open a movie the first weekend of September, a big movie first weekend of September, and they've
Mhm.
taken control of September, which is because this is their
Yeah.
third movie to open over $90 million in September, which again was a legitimate dead spot, a dead zone for
Warner,
many years.
hey, if I was an executive at Warner Brothers on the lot right now, I'd be crossing the street to go to the smokehouse for a well-deserved drink. The
Yeah, I mean, they opened a movie 36 years after its predecessor came out.
Mhm.
It's a big hit. It's doing very well. People seem to love it. I'm not gonna. Again, we had a review. If you want to go back and check out our review, which is on YouTube, the Deo episode where we also talk about Strange Darling. And if you can find Strange Darling anywhere, you should definitely see that in a theater where it can totally fuck with your brain. But $111 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money when the movie costs $100 million. It's also a lot of money domestically because, and this is something that we've also talked about with some of the things that Rich and I really love. Some of our shit does not travel overseas, and
No.
Beetlejuice is one of those things. Beetlejuice is a entirely domestic franchise. Although I will say an interesting thing happened. I don't know if you're paying attention to this, but one of the interesting box office things that's come out in the last couple of weeks, Alien Romulus, which didn't get any kind of like banning or any kind of like uh were they editing in China, made it across to China. Alien Romulus is doing amazingly well in China. For some reason, it's
I
like
would
it's one of the oddest
I would
box
say
office notes
because
of the
it's
year.
such a visual storytelling without a lot of, I mean, you can translate everything, you can dub it, you can sub it or what
Tyrese
have you, but ultimately that movie is about the action and the scares, and
and
both
it
of those
delivers. It delivers.
translate
I
don't need to be translated.
they don't need to be translated, but I just think it's one of the oddest things because usually it's the first Alien movie to play in China. It's like it's a weird bunch of subset of things where it's doing very well, and I'm so happy for it. But also, I went to see it again this past week. I really enjoy that movie. I think it's one of the I'm gonna go back to it as soon as it comes out in streaming. I can't wait. Couple comments, and then we'll get to the business at hand tonight. Let's see. um. Okay, Beetlejuice is making cash. Yes, and I don't see anything on the horizon that's gonna challenge it until we get to Joker. I saw Borderlands and really enjoyed it. I'm sorry. How? Why? Cheetah, I love you, but I can't stand that movie. I went with somebody who's a big fan of the game, and they hated the movie, and I hated the movie for it being a movie. It was a weird combination. He hated it for specific gaming reasons. I hated it because I didn't think it was a very well done movie. But we could talk about that some other time. Also, Cheetah, just so we're clear, Borderlands is one of the biggest box office disasters in recent memory.
Mm.
It is a mega flop of epic proportions. Superman Doc looks fantastic. It really does. It looks
Yeah,
really, really great.
It doesn't come out. My mistake. It doesn't come out until
The 21st, I think.
21st. Yeah. I am seeing it Wednesday.
Son of a bitch. I hate you so much. That's okay. That's okay. It's one of those.
Firmly anticipate crying my eyeballs out through.
I was watching the trailer and getting weepy.
Yeah, same here.
It was like one of those. Well, plus they were playing the music, and then they were like, then they started playing his voice. He had such a soft, gentlemanly voice. You know what I mean? I think it's gonna be one of those movies that we talk about after we see it. Maybe we even when we get a chance we do a review.
I'm kind of disappointed that it's only getting like this 2-day Fathom event kind of a release before it shows up online.
Yeah, I don't think. Again, we're making I will say this: we're making lots of mistakes in this streaming area. I will give you another one, folks. Give me 1 second. I will put up a sign for something where we need to talk to people who are giving these movies, who are releasing these movies. I watched the Netflix movie this weekend. I think it's one of the better movies of the year. It's called Rebel Ridge. Aaron Pierce, Don Johnson, Anna Sophia Robb from Winn-Dixie. So I will say to you that this movie has reminded me, and as I was watching it, it has a lot of social stuff going on, but it's a great action film. So it's combined, and it's one of those movies. Aaron Pierce plays a Marine veteran who is trying to get his cousin out of the clink because his cousin cannot go to state prison, because if his cousin goes to state prison, his cousin is part of a bigger ongoing case of a drug cartel. So if his cousin goes to state prison, his cousin will not make it because he will be a target because he's been one of the witnesses in a major drug cartel thing. It is one of the great movies of the year. It is this generation First Blood, because all I could think of was I'm watching it going, they're treating this guy like they treated John Rambo when he was just trying to get something to eat. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, well, and it's a really good action film. And what I'm going to say is Netflix needs to really get ahead of these things, because some of these goddamn movies need to be seen on a big screen. We had it with Beverly Hills Cop 4, Axel F, right? We have it with this. The Superman thing's only getting Fathom events. They're missing money here. And I think it's like we're missing money in an effort to hold up the streaming stuff, where streaming is going to be there no matter what. You know what I mean? You're leaving money on the table. Because there are movies
that Beetlejuice is going to be on streaming in October. And that feels like, leave it in the theater through the Halloween season, you dumbasses. It's a spooky season movie. I don't know if they opened it up too soon and then, or didn't
no, they were going. No, they were doing their September opening. And what I'm saying to you is, all that's happening with Warner Brothers is they're super smart, but they're also cutting off their nose to spite their faces. So we're doing this thing where we're releasing Beetlejuice in September, and we know that Warner Brothers is waiting in the weeds with Joker Folie à Deux, right? We know that that's going to do money. Tickets went on sale today. It's going to do money whether I like it or not, or you like it, or anybody likes it. Even if it's the most unpleasant of circumstances, as the first one was. Although great performances, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna but it just, the way it made me feel. Anyway, so they're leaving money on the table with the streaming stuff, and they're missing out on a movie getting a pedigree in a theater and then somehow becoming a cult hit, and then maybe making more money than you think it's going to make, because there's not a lot of competition, and you're releasing it and you go, oh well, that Rebel Ridge movie is really good, and I recommend it to everybody I talk to because it's one of the better movies I've seen this year. And it's got social justice stuff going on. It's also got a really good action plot, and the kid playing Terry is fantastic, and Anna Sophia Robb is one of those actresses that pops up in things, and she's way
Mm-hmm.
better than you think she is, but she actually is really perfecting these roles. It also has James Cromwell in it and Don Johnson. It's a really good cast, and the director is a guy named Saulnier who did Green Room.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way better than expected movie that landed on my Netflix door on Friday and should have been in a theater on Friday. Not against Beetlejuice, but maybe next Friday or the Friday after, where it could have made some money. But I digress. I'm sick of streaming, but I love streaming because I will say to you, and I'll say to everybody watching the show, it was my dad's dream to be able to walk into a room and go, I want to watch The Searchers, and be able to just flick a button and The Searchers appears.
Mm-hmm.
How do I apply to be Rich's +1 to some of these flicks? Have to move to Philly
Yeah.
or Pennsylvania. But yeah, he's super lucky, and we both love him and hate him for it.
Hey, I get to bring my reviews of that right here to the channel though. When
way to suck up, Rich. Way to suck up, buddy. So speaking of reviews and speaking of things we do on the channel, let's talk Shaun of the Dead. It's 20 years old. We're gonna go get a pint, go to the Winchester, fight some zombies. We don't know what caused the zombies. But let's start on that also. But before I do that, if you enjoy the reviews, if you enjoy us looking at movies like this every week, if you enjoy our reviews on Fridays when we show up in your feed at 4 o'clock to go, hey, don't spend some money on a movie, or hey, don't go spend money on this movie. Wait for it to stream, which is kind of funny that we're having this conversation now. Like and find our YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Indie Escape Network. Like and subscribe. Or if you're Raven, who's watching the show tonight, like and subscribe twice or 2 or 3 times. Whatever you need to do to help us out. But we're going to do Shaun of the Dead. We're going to give it the Generation Movie treatment. Let's start where we always start, Rich. Let's start with the importance of production and finding everything, and also like the great stuff about this production of Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah. I've been doing like a big deep dive into a lot of sketch comedy over the last couple of years, and rewatching this movie today, I was amazed by how many other people from the British comedy scene are in this thing, and how many different weird connections. First of all, and most importantly,
just scattered about, by the way, just so we're clear. Also, you watched it today. I watched it 2 weeks ago when it had a really good weekend at the box office, by the way. Just so we're clear, we're talking about go get movies in theaters, right? It had a $3 million weekend a couple weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
which is great. When you look at the numbers, it's almost a tenth of its total box office take in one weekend.
But yeah, it started off. Both Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg were comedy writers. They got their first jobs on each of their resumes was writing for a British series called Asylum. It only ran 6 episodes. That's one of the things I have not been able to track down and see yet. And by all accounts, so it wasn't that great. But those two guys became friends. Edgar Wright started directing a bit. He also directed on Asylum. He then kind of moved on and directed a series starring comedian Bill Bailey, which had some sketches in it. And he would call up his friend Simon and say, "Hey, we're doing this sketch thing over on Bill Bailey. You want to hang out and help us?" And he'd say, "Sure." Meanwhile, Simon Pegg was kind of doing some other stuff. He did he did Is It Bill Bailey also. He was on a series called Big Train, which also starred Catherine Tate, who went on to be on Doctor Who. And that ran for 2 seasons, as you can see here on the on my DVD set of that. And Edgar Wright also did a little bit of acting and stuff. He showed up on a couple of episodes of the absolutely insanely funny British series, Look Around You, which stars Peter Serafinowicz as the host of a kind of like, it's a throwback to like early 80s this is the emerging science around the world, kind of a sciencey educational show. And Edgar Wright would show up in a couple of episodes of that, and that's how we wind up getting Peter Serafinowicz into Shaun of the Dead. Ultimately, Simon and Edgar got back together and said, hey, let's do this really cool idea, and about a guy and a girl who are just friends, but they claim to be a couple so they can rent a flat, and make that about all their wacky friends and everything else. And that's how we wound up with Spaced. Edgar Wright directed this. Edgar Wright really developed the style that we see in Shaun of the Dead in this show. This show is also where they first hooked up with Nick Frost, who is in Shaun of the Dead also as a co-lead. Jennifer, I want to say Jennifer Saunders, and that's not right. But Jessica Stevenson, excuse me, is the other co-lead in Spaced, and she is the friend leading the other group that we run into a couple of times in Shaun of the Dead.
Jessica Hines, I mean, right? Jessica Hines.
Yeah, she married, changed her name to Hines, and then changed it back to Stevenson.
Okay. Marriages.
And also, it's funny because then Nick Frost showed up on an episode of Black Books, which starred Dylan Moran, who plays the guy with the spectacles. Another actor from Black Books also shows up in Shaun of the Dead in the other group that Jessica Stevenson's running. It's very interconnected, and I had a lot of fun recognizing, suddenly going, oh, hey, that guy's from League of Gentlemen. Oh, and so's that guy from League of Gentlemen. And it was fun kind of.
Well, yeah, it's a bunch of people that are together that like each other, right? That's the key to this. And this movie is very well based on an episode of Spaced called Art, right? Where basically there's an episode where Simon Pegg gets high on methamphetamine and is playing Resident Evil, and they have it's a zombie apocalypse episode where he doesn't know what's happening. And then also, like, I think the interesting thing here is one of the production things that you come up on when you're studying it is that Edgar Wright fell in love with this idea so much that he stopped taking jobs until somebody paid for it. Like, he stopped, it's a real interesting kind of thing where
they're ready to go.
They started filming it, and then they lost their funding, and then they eventually get funding from people they're making fun of in the movie. Working Title Films is who basically produces the film. By the way, I do want to say, playing it on the big screen with an audience that loves it, best way to see Shaun of the Dead. Like, I love Shaun of the Dead, and I think when you're around a giant group, we saw it in Dolby for the first time. So nice. It was like, it's the first time it's been upgraded to 4K Dolby, and it was incredible. Go ahead.
While we're on the subject here, I was going to say this for the end, but on the subject of actually seeing it on a big screen, I've only ever seen this on home video. I have yet to. We didn't get the re-release in this area. However, anybody in Eastern Pennsylvania within driving distance of the Mahoning Drive-In Theater outside of Allentown, towards the end of October, they're showing Shaun of the Dead one night off a 35 millimeter print. I would say go to their website and check it out if you're interested in heading to that.
That seems amazing.
Yes. It feels like a really good drive-in movie too. So
feels like a perfect thing to dress up for at the Mahoning around Halloween. These are characters these are easy costumes that you can pull off. So they wrote the screenplay in 8 weeks. Movies that they watched during their time that they always talk about that they watched: Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, the two best Dead movies. Raising Arizona, which it does have a Coen Brothers comedic sense of violence and kind of whimsy. They
Hmm.
watch Back to the Future together, Brain Dead, The Birds. And The Birds is an interesting one because I think there is a real. The dead are kind of treated like the birds in this movie. And when I read it, I was like thinking about it, right? You're watching it, and the way Hitchcock films the birds, with the birds kind of just everywhere and nowhere at once. You know what I mean? Like the dead
Hmm.
play the same role in
Well,
this movie.
and
You
I
know?
would say getting to the Winchester is pretty much the same thing as getting to Bodega Bay.
Yes,
So,
it's very similar, and but it's one of those things where if you have a good filmmaker, really good actors, and people who understand what you're going for, it's just an amazing kind of thing where you can watch great films and not ape them, but be inspired by them, right? And then they're also kind of they're inspired by like the British stuff that they grew up with, right? Their shows are all kind of like, faulty towers ish in nature, right? With
mhm.
deep comic drive going through them. And I think the coolest story again is, he made a quarter of the movie, lost funding, and then wouldn't take a job to the point where he was in debt, right? Wouldn't take a job until he talked somebody into giving him the money to make it, which I think is it's an incredible kind of like devotion. And like the Pegg and Frost had talked about how worried they were about Edgar, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that he kind of like he took it on his chin for this movie. Um, but it gets made, and it gets made for like not a lot of money. Like the budget ends up being reasonable. $6 million for a full-on zombie apocalypse movie is pretty good, Rich. It's pretty damn
Hmm.
skippy. A couple comments as we leave production and work on some other things. Every time I hear someone say Shaun of the Dead, I think they're calling up my name. Interesting. You're Sean. You're one of the only people who has the same spelling, which I think
Mm.
is kind of funny. Um, Asylum 1996 is on YouTube, but poor quality.
I've seen it. I've seen that it's there. I've been kind of like wanting to find a good quality version of it to watch, though.
It's not on like
Um,
BBC or anything like that.
no, it's not. I checked. Internet Archive, which usually has some really obscure stuff stashed away if you know how to find it. I was just
If you
downloading
know,
something
like
today from
if you
there.
if you know the secret knock to get it out.
Yeah.
Um, so production goes. It doesn't. It lasts for a couple of years because of all the things going on with the development of it and doing whatever casting. Rich kind of hit on it pretty well. It's a bunch of people that are spaced. Black Books, The Office,
Hmm.
cast members from all those different shows. They did approach Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren was approached for Barbara. Um, she turned it down because she wanted to play somebody else that was funnier. The role of Barbara, Sean's mom went to Barbara Wilton. Um,
Penelope Wilton,
I'm sorry, Penelope Wilton. I
who's
misspoke.
on who was on early seasons of the new the reboot of Doctor Who, as was Nick
And she
Frost,
was
as
a
was
part of
Pegg.
a major British sitcom from '84 to '89 called Ever Decreasing Circles. Of
Hmm.
course, Sean's stepfather Philip is played by Bill Nighy, um, and he accepted the role right after he got the script. He read the script, loved it, realized he was playing Philip. Whatever. Additional cameos are extensive, right? Martin Freeman, uh, you know, the voices of Mark Gatiss and Julia Davis. Um, you know what I mean? Uh, there's so many cameos and so many different things. Um, the zombie extras were recruited from space fan communities. Like It's crazy. And then Wright revealed in 2020 that the zombies spent a week cooped up on a set. They had to stand outside the Winchester, banging on the windows and not doing much else really. When we eventually involved them properly, they had this electric energy, a pure crazed hysteria, Wright said. Um, and there were originally 40 stunt performers hired to be the zombies, but when production realized they would need a lot more to fill set pieces, fans responded to the online call that additions to select zombies were up for. 150 zombie extras until local children saw the zombie makeup and wanted to be involved, leading to another 50 child zombies being added. Crazy. The film was shot over 9 weeks in London, both on location and at Ealing Studios. So, you know, pretty amazing. It's a really well done. It's not like it's one of those low budget, but it seems high budget, right, Rich? Because of how well they know each other, how well they know the setting, how well they know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
I dare say it's the style of the film that kind of gives it that production value. This is a very singular vision. Nobody would have directed this movie this way except for Edgar Wright. And I'm glad because, as funny as just the regular script itself is, I think what Wright is doing, as a director, totally elevates it. The long oneers of Shaun going out through the garden gate, across the street and up the block to get something at the convenience store, and then walking back. Not doing that shot once, but twice, and using that to show how things have changed overnight.
Twice to an amazingly eerie perfection, right? The second time, the audience, you realize it, and Shaun is so delusional and like just going through the motions of his life.
Somebody synced up both of those scenes, so you can watch it how well it plays out, almost in synchronicity at points. How it's
an incredible bit of filmmaking, and also you're right, singular vision with incredible talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as we progress, box office looks something like this. Now, it's a cult film, so we're not going to be too enraptured with the box office, but it is an impressive cult film.
Mm-hmm.
So opening weekend opens to $3.3 million. Again, not a lot for us, but 3.3 is already half the budget, right? Theater count opening weekend was 607 theaters. It eventually grew out to about 675 theaters nationwide, and those theaters lasted for 6.7 weeks, which is incredible. Production budget on the numbers is listed at $5 million, not $6 million, but we're just counting. But the box office worldwide is 6 times the production budget. So worldwide box office includes 6 weeks for about $15 million in the States, and international box office of 15.4, so it does well overseas. You're looking at about $30 million. Now, domestic adjusted is about $24 million. So you're talking about 4 times the budget, just by the inflation adjusted. And again, this past weekend, it did the opening weekend it had in 2004, 20 years ago, was 3.3 million. And these past couple of weekends, it actually did that at the box office like a couple weekends ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an incredible thing where you look at it and you're like, did it do so well? Like, it did so well that it kind of like, and it wasn't on a lot of screens, right? And so it's a good thing when movies get re-released to theaters because fans can enjoy them again. But the
crazy
number, crazy, it's amazing. But people might want to see the movies they love on a big screen with a bunch of people with like-minded taste. I'm shocked But again, it didn't get a lot of play in the States. 675 theaters. This is very much a movie that is based on how well it did on video, how well it transferred on video, and how well it's been passed around. You know, you remember the time, Rich, when you were younger, where you had VHS or discs, and you had a movie that you loved, and you would pass it to somebody, and then you would pass it to somebody else.
Well,
This is one of those movies. Also, a movie that probably got rented a hell of a lot at Blockbuster.
Oh God, yeah. And what's funny is Spaced wasn't available yet in the U.S. on home video because of some music licensing rights issues. So it didn't even have like that built-in audience outside of like those of us who were like early online people who were like
trying to find shit,
reading Ain't It Cool news every day, and then suddenly hearing about this TV show, and then going to a convention or a comics show or something, and the bootleg video guy might have had like
who told you I read Ain't It Cool news every day?
Dude, I contributed to Ain't It Cool news.
So did I. Anyway, moving on.
But
moving on in our nerddom.
Yeah, so that this movie kind of like caught fire the way it did without the kind of tinder of having a even a built-in audience outside of just a very few people who are like, oh shit, this is from those guys who I heard about the other thing about, and that it would kind of do as well as it did is great. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's actually kind of amazing. And also, like, when you have people that you really like, aren't we rooting for them in our heart? Like, we're like,
oh, yeah.
I root for the people that I think do good work, and Edgar Wright is one of those people. Some comments. Let's see. Chris Martin from Coldplay is a zombie.
Chris Martin.
What I miss? Everything. Shaking my head.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry you lost power.
Chris Martin is also the vocalist singing along with the band Ash on one of the songs in the end credits. And Ash is just a pretty cool British rock band from that
my
era,
God, you ever hear something called Rocky Horror Picture Show Laugh Out Loud? Like-minded persons and such. No, I don't. Is that a movie? Is that a show?
Never
But the box office is great. Also,
I like boxing movies.
I don't like boxing movies. But the other thing is the look of the movie is actually kind of incredible. Like I was looking at like the shots, the frames, like the frame-ups of like the zombie stuff where like the zombies are in the background and like they're like the focus on the faces of the actors so that you can get the maximum comedic touch out of it, right? And like this sequence here is one of my favorite in the movie. They're walking home from the bar and they're drunk, and they're doing a famous song, and they're in like the zombie is going at the right moment for them. But just how the shot looks, like everything bathed in shadows. This of course is Shaun walking around, not realizing there's blood on the handprints on the walls. One of the early posters for the movie that appeared in London subway posters for the movie, which is kind of like brilliantly ironic. And then everybody kind of walking and doing like it becomes like a walk-in movie. And I think when you look at it, it becomes one of the more successful things that you can fall in love with this movie. Critical response then and now.
I was going to say, just one last little bit before we move on. I really wish, and forgive me if it's out there and I don't, I wish somebody would publish in like a big giant art book thing all of the storyboards from this movie, because this is so carefully composed and shot and edited that they had to have done a lot of pre-production, in order to maximize their time, because some of these shots are tricky, but if you know exactly what you're looking for on your day, you come in and you can bang through all of that stuff fairly easily, even the tricky stuff, because you know what it's going to be and how
Well,
it's going to.
Edgar Wright has become one of our our favorite quirky, kind of amazing filmmakers. You know, he does Baby Driver and almost does Ant-Man. I still would have liked to see his Ant-Man, to be honest.
Well,
But
I mean, we did get a glimpse of that with the that test footage that he shot of Ant-Man fighting the two guys, and then they wind up using basically that as a guide for a sequence in the movie.
yeah, with the gunfire sequence.
Yeah.
So we use Rotten Tomatoes around here. It's not a bad thing. It's just something we use it as a review aggregate. So this movie, Rich, on Rotten Tomatoes, critical response. Hold on, I went to the wrong page. Critical response 92%, remarkably high for a horror comedy, and then 93% from the audience. So, dare I say, critics and audience members agree about this movie, Rich? Do we have a total agreement?
20
And like I said,
agree.
like I said, this is one of those rare times when, as you're going through critic reviews, looking for different things. Came out 2004. I was looking for, I was looking for the people that didn't like it, because we're talking about hundreds of reviews, right? Over 200 reviews. I was looking for the people who didn't like it, and every once in a while you can read them. Wright's film acquiesced in the coupling up plot rom-coms require, but not without first preserving the routine, pointless daily life of its protagonist. I think that reviewer missed the point, Rich. Like I think that I think part of the movie is this guy who's in Arrested Development, who's basically, he finally has something in his life that he really loves and doesn't actually understand it, right? And realizes that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for people you love, and also you have to sacrifice yourself to the relationship, right? So I think part of that reviewer is absolutely insane in that it's not that they match up the romantic coupling in the movie. And the romantic coupling in the movie is interesting because it's essentially Shaun and Ed, and the other romantic coupling is Shaun and Liz. And at some point you have to put away childish things, right? That's said at almost every marriage in the history of our society since the Bible put it in, right? Put away childish things. I think this movie is more about Arrested Development, and I think if you don't get that, and about like how people in British society feel they're constantly going through the motions, and it's perfectly illustrated by that sequence at the beginning of the movie, right? The getting up, going down, getting a drink at the local store, coming back, and then doing it again. But now there's a zombie invasion. Now there's a zombie apocalypse. Which, by the way, I think one of the funniest things the movie does in rewatching it is that it goes through all the list of what zombie movies have blamed apocalypses on forever. They're all there. There's a meteor. There's some sort of
virus.
Space virus. There's an army contaminant. They're all there, and they never ever explain what happened. Right? They never ever say this is what caused the zombie, because I think that makes it more fun, not knowing. We have an entire television series that's built on the idea of not knowing. But the movie lands all the laughs that you want. The Nick Frost character is the baboon that you desperately want from Every Which Way But Loose, which is referenced. Can I tell you that Every Which Way But Loose is a movie I grew up with? And so when that movie gets referenced in this movie, I was just thinking, I liked Right Turn, Clyde, right? That was, when I was a kid, that was amazing, right? That the orangutan knew how to do that. So when that gets referenced, one of the things that they do with this movie, Rich, is these guys are watching the same movies you and I are watching, and
Oh yeah,
that the
it's yeah.
audience is watching, and it becomes like this thing where like, what are they going to reference next? What are they going to, and that kind of, it piles up such goodwill that you're willing to go on this ride. And even though it's a British movie, a British comedy, right? For me, one of the things that I think is amazing is how they've been shaped by not only British things, British comedy and British, sitcoms, British, all these different things, but American
Mhm.
movies. They
Yeah, it's
love American movies.
it's very much a remix type of movie, the same way a lot of Tarantino's work is. They're finding certain things about movies that they like, that they want to use and play with these certain tropes and things like that, and they want to see, can we recombine them into something new, and what do we say with that? Here, it's a comment about the sameness of everyday life in suburbia, just in modern day society. That it's turned us into zombies. Um,
Right, which means
so
that they have taken the single greatest
this will
zombie
not be
movie
the
ever
only
made,
time I
Dawn of the Dead. They've taken Dawn of the Dead and taken at its core, the consumerism making us zombies aspect that is so prevalent in Dawn of the Dead, right? And
Mhm.
they've expanded it out and made a giant comedy about it. Also, there are some really good, like from a horror fan perspective, they don't break any of the rules of zombie movies, which I think is really important. Now we get comedies all the time where people are, I'm going to break the rules of this movie to make it into a comedy. But the real great comedies come when you take a movie, a genre, a subject, a whatever, and you play
Mhm.
by the rules of the genre and show the comedy in the genre, right? Like
Yeah.
the idea that we run around and we try to attack zombies, and then somebody eventually says in every zombie movie, one force trauma to the head won't work, right? It happens all the time. It happens in Night of the Living Dead. It happens in Dawn of the Dead. And it's just one of those funny things. And when it gets announced here, they go to the funny extreme where they're like, we're going to use wicked bats from it becomes a wacky kind of thing, like pool cues and all these different things,
Mhm.
because they have no guns to work with because it's British society, which is hilarious.
Yes.
Like it's a commentary on what are you going to use, and like there's one gun in the film and it's above the bar at the Winchester because the bar is named after the Winchester. And I think that's also a funny commentary on, you know, these zombie movies that we get where everybody has like, you know, endless amounts of ammo and to do whatever the hell they want. When in reality, you're probably in a zombie apocalypse, you're probably going to be doing more Shaun of the Dead things, grabbing
Yeah.
something and just fucking whacking the shit out of things. So
Uh, hmm.
it's it's a hybrid horror comedy that I think for me gets all the horror stuff right. So once it gets all the horror stuff right, they have free reign to do all the comedy they want to do because I'm already invested, right?
Mhm. One other thing I want to bring up, and sometimes I think it gets overlooked when talking about Edgar Wright's style and everything. And this is going to be the second time I bring up Tarantino. Is um, Edgar Wright knows how to do a needle drop like nobody's business. He knows how to use pop music in his movies. And
In all
literally,
ways.
from this movie forward, I put him on the same level as Tarantino and Martin Scorsese in that
Yeah, in
regard.
that they can use music to tell a big part of their story. In this case, though, the funny things that the needle drops that you're speaking of, in Baby Driver, they're deadly serious. In this, they're often hilarious moments where the music
Yeah,
starts up because the jukebox is broken, or like it just it's funny
yeah.
things.
We're playing
I
Smith's Panic on the Streets of London, for goodness sakes.
Yes, I
You
he's
can't do that seriously in this movie.
right.
It's a
He's one of the filmmakers that has a a necessary hand on his pulse his own pulse, his own music taste that he knows he can incorporate into these amazing sequences. And I just one of the best examples of hybrid horror comedies of all time, in the sense that very rarely do we get anything that's this movie is on par, and I'm going to say this and not and maybe get some flack, but I don't care. It's on par with Young Frankenstein in the idea that it gets the genre and it
Mm-hmm.
understands the genre, and then the way you can understand the genre and then be able to make fun of it is so much more enlightening and so much more true to the nature of the movie than if you don't understand the genre, you're making jokes about something, and you're kind of placing the jokes and the jokes. This is a service. The jokes in this movie are a service to the genre. They make
Yeah,
other genre movies better because of the jokes.
yeah, this is a movie that understands what it's the genre. It wants to be part of that genre, and so it's kind of like the laughter's coming from inside. The jokes are coming from inside the
Inside
the
yeah, they're
genre.
inside the house.
Movies,
That's a great way to put
will
it.
be
They're coming from
fun
inside the house.
of, and the jokes will be coming outside of the genre at the genre. This comes from a place of inside.
Of
It's
love.
so
It comes from
inside.
a
It's
place
like,
of love.
hey, we're all zombie movie fans here. We know that these things are tropes, so we're gonna have a little fun with them. Oh, you're not a big zombie movie person? That's okay. We've got this other romantic comedy storyline. Basically, it's just a romantic
Yeah,
comedy.
we've got a fully blown Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks movie, as well as
Mhm.
a fully,
So we're gonna
fully
play with those tropes.
yeah, a fully grown Romero movie going. And I think that's the general, like, that's why I think this movie has such love and such fandom, is because it's really great if you're a genre fan and people who are making fun of the genre are as big a fans that you are, and there are things that you and I have said, watching a zombie movie where it's like, well, that doesn't work because it's the same thing, but they're making fun of it, and you're like, they get me, they truly get me, right? A
Yeah,
couple comments. Let's see if I can see
yeah.
them.
We've gone on, and some of these are way in the past here.
Laugh out loud, hate boxing movies. Cornetto trilogy. We're not there yet, but we will talk about it because it does have a legacy. Mother is
Mm-hmm.
played by Penelope Wilson, like British TV royalty, and it was such a weird movie for her to show up in. And she still stole all the scenes she's in. She's great. She's
Yeah.
fantastic. Barbara is wonderful. I would fight for her the same way Ed would. Shush now. British zombie comedies are great. Have you ever seen Cocktail versus Zombies? Laugh out loud. I have not.
No.
Check it
No.
out. Actually, now that you mention it, Rich, they've had several similarities in not just music and editing style and cinematic styling. Yeah, it's he's one of the most accomplished filmmakers that incorporates music in a way that makes their movies, like, it pushes their movies into overdrive.
Yeah,
Um,
it's such an assured hand for a. I mean, yeah, he has the TV background, but it's such an assured hand for directorial style here that it's just like it's
it
mind
shows up
blowing.
in his other movies. It shows up
Yeah, I mean, like I
as we
said
talk,
before,
as we talk and breathe. Legacy, franchise, viability. Um,
I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Like I said before, though, Spaced was where he was working out a lot of these visual ideas. Um, the one thing in the Winchester where you're kind of like doing the video game POV of the gun and stuff like that, they do that gag in Spaced as well. But there's other things, and just him getting more and more accomplished with the camera. And Spaced is really funny. I'm not saying go watch Spaced just to see the development of his style. Go watch it because it's funny, it's heartfelt. You're seeing a bunch of great actors at the start of their career. Um,
Well,
Sometimes the
that's
accents are a little thick, and some of the '90s British cultural references may go over your head, but that's okay. Just kind of hang on to it, though. 'Cause
it's
it's
based is
really worth
very much
it.
like the IT Crowd, right? It's one of those shows that you can go back and watch now and go,
Yeah. Well,
where are these people going?
I have a little trouble watching the IT Crowd, but that's mostly because the creator of the IT Crowd is a horrible, horrible piece of shit now. So
Yeah, that terrible person. Anyway, just something that might be I show up. Legacy, franchise viability. So obviously we don't have a franchise in the sense of movies, but when you're looking at this show, like this movie, some of the interesting things that have popped out of it, right? Like there's a comic book adaptation, there's a comic strip, right, that they've gotten going. Pegg and Wright have scripted a one-off comic strip called There's Something About Mary, and it's basically set the day before the zombie outbreak. The strip follows and expands on the character of Mary, who appears briefly in the introductory credits and is the first zombie who Shaun and Ed are aware of. She's the lady in the garden, right? The strip details how she became a zombie. So that is just like an idea of like how amazing they've kind of branched out with this franchise, right? It's not necessarily we're going to get new movies or new anything, but this comic strip has been running for a good it's been running for a while in British papers. So um so just something to think about. They've also written a couple of comics where they did a 4-issue adaptation with IDW Publishing, drawn by Zach Howard, written by Chris Ryall. Um, the comic includes scenes that were left out of the film and that were shot but never put out. And for the first time, we're getting Shaun of the Dead collectibles and action figures and all kinds of stuff. So, it's the legacy isn't necessarily just the movie itself. The legacy is Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, and Nick Frost moving on to bigger and better things, including the Cornetto trilogy. Yeah, they became their own franchise, including the Cornetto trilogy, right? So part of the legacy of this movie is they become financially bankable at the box office, and thus studios line up to be able to let them make other movies like, I don't know, Hot Fuzz, which is on par with Shaun of the Dead and making fun of cop action movies, right? And then At the World's End, right? Or The World's End, I should say.
Yes.
And so, they become their own franchise, these three guys, which is kind of interesting. It's part of their legacy, but also we hit on it a little bit. You see little bits of their, like Simon Pegg being such a movie nerd, branching out into Star Wars, branching out into Star Trek, right? And because like he's seen the talent is clearly there. He is banked on for other things. Edgar Wright getting to do Baby Driver and doing the soundtrack for Baby Driver, and the soundtrack for this movie is basically, like you said, the piecework by which other movie soundtracks that Edgar Wright makes are all based on like understanding it, and it comes from this movie, right?
Oh yeah.
I think if they wanted to, they could do a legacy sequel, but why? This is one of those movies that like The Matrix. I wish that they had just made one movie. Do you know what I mean? And this is one of those movies where making one movie, sure, they can make a sequel and they can make a lot of bank and do whatever, but why would you touch the original? Is there anything, any other legacies you see from I actually think the other major legacy is that this is how you make a horror comedy, right? You make a horror comedy where you're playing with the genre, but you have to understand the genre tropes first. They have
there
to
have
be
been horror comedies before. I mean, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein,
Young Frankenstein,
Zombies on Broadway, Evil Dead.
But this is one of the better ones in relationship.
It redefined how you can do this.
Yes, and also just it also is a legacy of like becoming a horror comedy that's part of the genre that inspired the horror comedy is not something that happens all the time, Rich. As somebody who loves horror films, it doesn't happen all the time where you get a horror comedy that understands the genre and then becomes part of the genre that inspired it. It doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I think it's got that going for it too. I think we're done. I think the Cornetto trilogy is a good place to stop. I think it's a perfect place to stop.
I would just add that
it was great seeing you on the
another
big screen.
Is all these comic actors going on to do amazing things on their own. You know, Lucy Davis in The Office, Simon Pegg's amazing film career, Nick Frost continuing to work in British comedy, doing sketch series and narrative comic series, sitcoms, and stuff like that. Edgar Wright's film career, of course, that we touched on, and it's awesome. It's a great convergence point of all this talent that then
and
kind
it's
of
it's a wonderful success story. And you just like they're guys that I root for. I know you root for them. And being able to kind of establish their own voice and then spread out in all the different directions, right? And do whatever they want to do. And it's really doesn't happen that often. Like we were saying, it doesn't happen that often, Rich, where you get lucky, where you get everybody kind of like hitting their hitting their own and actually making a movie that inspires others to make their own movies, right? Okay, Rich Drees, you got stuff going on. Where can people find you? What are you talking about this week? Aside the rest in peace article for James Earl Jones.
Over all of my writing can be found at FilmBuffOnline.com. I can tell you for certain because I actually finished it early. On Wednesday at 5 o'clock, we'll be dropping Eastern Standard Time. We'll be dropping our review of Kevin Smith's new film, The 4:30 Movie. I'm excited about that and excited to let people know about that. Both other podcasts that I do right now are on hiatus, although we might be coming back. I don't want to count this chicken until it's hatched. But the Big Picture podcast with my good friend and co-host Natasha Bogutsky.
We miss her. We miss her around here.
We might be back this week. It depends on if we can make everything happen tomorrow evening.
We missed her. We'd like to get her for a couple things before the end of the year.
Oh, I've already talked to her about that, and she seems game for some of this. So
I need drunk Natasha on my screen when she's drinking and boozing and talking about movies she loves.
Film Buff Online also has a Facebook page that you can go and sign up.
You've been talking about this super secret thing you're working on. Has that released yet? When does the super secret thing release?
Super secret thing's another 2 weeks.
Wow, that's
another 2 weeks. You can start it.
That's a long time. Okay.
I know. Sorry about that. And okay. I can be found on the socials at FilmBuffRich on Twitter and Blue Sky.
Okay, so I can be found JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram. I also will be making an appearance on TJ Bowser's show this week. I think Wednesday at 6. I'll be talking some Suspiria. So Suspiria or whatever, Suspiria. It's all Italian to me, Rich. All Italian. Anyway, moving on. It's been a long day. You can find me all those places. You could also find me tomorrow night with my good friends, the boys, causing trouble on this show called Loud and Nerdy. We'll be discussing a lot of things tomorrow night, including more in detail on Rebel Ridge, a little bit more in detail on, we're going to get in detail for our show on the great Strange Darling and Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, we'll talk some more as well. You can find me tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Last comments of the night, my favorite thing, last comments. I like Pegg and Frost in Paul. Another good movie. Again, you have to understand the genre. They understand the genre. I don't know that it's a great movie, but it's a good movie. Send me the link, JW. I will get the link to you as soon as I have it. And then so much testosterone. I feel I didn't have any testosterone tonight. But anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week. Next week, Richard.
What are we doing next week? Because I forgot.
Next week we do a
Oh,
little bit. Speaking of testosterone, great movie. Thank you, Raven. We're doing the original Hellboy from Guillermo del Toro. This is a franchise in flux, and also we are doing Hellboy next week. Next week, as we prepare for the new Hellboy: The Crooked Man coming out. Trailers are, how do I say this to you, Rich? Uninspiring. They're not.
That's a way to put it.
That's a way to put it.
That's a polite way to put it. Let's leave it at
the other problem with this franchise, we're going to talk about it next week. The problem with making other Hellboy movies with other Hellboys and other directors is that the first two Hellboy movies by Guillermo del Toro, starring Ron Perlman as Hellboy, are pretty good movies.
I know.
So it becomes this real big problem of trying to gild the lily. It's a weird thing, but we'll talk about the front.
I'm gonna have to think about it across the week, but in a way, the way Hellboy has kind of been all kind of like fluctuating around, going from creator to creator and stuff. It reminds me of basically how uneven the Jack Ryan series has been overall.
All over the place. All over the place.
Moves around his actors.
Well, and actually, it moves around the actors. That's a very good point. And the funny thing is, maybe it's the thing where they should have gone with Hellboy, but maybe Hellboy needs his own show, his own television show, right? Because where they found, Hellboy 2 are a set of movies that you and I, and if you had told me that we weren't going to get a Hellboy 3 directed by Guillermo del Toro, I would have laughed. I would have laughed because I felt like it ends on a cliffhanger, right? And then we get the weird Hellboy reboot that has a pretty game David Harbour, but everything else is kind of meh. And then we have this new one where everything looks kind of meh. And even the trailer. I hope. Yeah, we're not. I'm sorry. It has got. For me, and Joe is going to kill me, but I'm going to say this: it has got the Crow reboot all written all over it for me. And you didn't experience that. No. I experienced that, and
it's like I told you off camera at one point. The Crow reboot might be the first major comic book film
that you've avoided
in a theater that I have skipped since Superman the movie in 1978. So. Really? You know my love of the genre, but I've sat through Jonah Hex. I've sat through Catwoman. I've sat through motherfucking Steel. Okay, so
Del Toro is amazing, and need more animated Hellboy. The animated Hellboy stuff was good. We'll talk about this and more next week as we prepare for Hellboy: The Crooked Man. But we're gonna watch a really good movie next week, and the second one is as good, if not better, than the first one. So, thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week. Have a good week at the movies. Go see something. Enjoy.